We all get angry. But there is a distinct difference between everyday, manageable anger and I am going to sell my entire aristocratic estate to purchase a maritime murder fleet anger. King Philip VI of France failed to understand this distinction, and it cost him a terrifying amount of blood. The year is 1343, and the War of the Breton Succession is tearing France apart. Enter Olivier de Clisson, a wealthy lord fighting for the French side. But when Olivier gets captured by the English and released for a suspiciously low ransom, King Philip gets paranoid. He decides, with zero proof, that Olivier is a traitor. But Philip doesn't arrest him on the battlefield. That would be too honorable. Instead, he waits for a peace treaty to be signed. Under the strict, sacred protection of this truce, he invites Olivier to a friendly jousting tournament in Paris. But the moment Olivier steps on French soil, the trap springs. He is arrested, given a sham trial behind closed doors, and on August 2nd, 1343, he is publicly beheaded. Executing a nobleman without public proof was a massive taboo. It shocked the French nobility to their core, but King Philip wanted to send a message. He subjected Olivier to the punishment of a low-class criminal, desecrating his body, hanging it from the highest gibbet in Paris, and sending his severed head to his hometown of Nantes to be stuck on a spike. Enter Jeanne de Clisson, Olivier's wife, a noblewoman, a mother. When the news reached her, Jeanne didn't weep in her chambers. She didn't beg the king for mercy. Instead, she took her 2 young sons by the hand, walked them through the rain to the city gates, and forced them to look up at the rotting, severed head of their father. "Look at him," she said. "Look at what the King of France has done. This is not justice. This is cowardice. We will never forget this." She made them memorize the atrocity. And in that exact moment, beneath the Sauvetou gate, the aristocratic noblewoman died. The Lioness of Brittany was born. When the king summoned her for rebellion, she ignored him. When he confiscated her lands, she liquidated whatever she had left. She used her vast fortune to raise a private army of 400 loyal, hardened men. She started on land, breaching French castles and slaughtering garrisons. But Jeanne quickly realized that if she truly wanted to bleed the king, she couldn't just attack his stones. She had to attack his wallet. She had to take to the sea. Jeanne took her fortune to the coast and bought 3 massive warships, and she didn't bother trying to blend in. She wanted the French to see their death approaching. She painted the hulls of the ships pitch black, and she dyed the sails blood red. She named her flagship, with absolutely zero subtlety, My Revenge. When French commerce ships saw that black and red fleet cutting through the fog, they knew their time was up. Jeanne's tactics were utterly merciless. She crossed the channel, boarding French ships and wiping out the crews. But she had a very specific, terrifying protocol for French nobility. If there were aristocrats on board, men loyal to the king who murdered her husband, Jeanne didn't delegate the execution. She would have them dragged to the deck. She would stand over them in her blood-soaked clothes, and she would personally separate their heads from their shoulders with an axe. An eye for an eye, a head for a head. She became known as the Red Lady, a phantom haunting the waters of Brittany. But Jeanne wasn't just a killer. She was a master of psychological warfare. After turning the deck of a French ship into an absolute abattoir and sending the nobles to the bottom of the sea, she would always ensure she left exactly 1 or 2 sailors alive. Why? Because she needed a messenger. "Sail this ship back to Philip," she would tell them. "Tell him the lioness sends her regards. Tell him I am not finished." She wanted those terrified survivors to sail their empty, blood-soaked ships back to port. She wanted King Philip to know that the ghost of Olivier de Clisson was dismantling his empire piece by piece. For 13 years, the Lioness of Brittany terrorized the French crown. She allied with the English, essentially operating as a completely untouchable, state-sponsored pirate. And the wildest part of this entire story, when she finally felt her vengeance was complete, she didn't die in some fiery, tragic battle at sea. She simply retired. She hung up her axe, married an English knight, settled down in a massive castle, and died quietly at the age of 59. Jeanne de Clisson waged a one-woman apocalyptic war against the King of France, destroyed his ships, executed his nobles, and got away with it entirely. Jeanne de Clisson proved that you should never cross someone with nothing left to lose. But what happens when you cross an empire that has everything? In 1217, a greedy Middle Eastern governor named Inalchuk decided to rob and murder a trade caravan. The problem? That caravan belonged to a rising power in the east named Genghis Khan. When Khan tried to resolve it diplomatically, Inalchuk doubled down and murdered the ambassadors. Genghis Khan's response? He wiped Inalchuk's entire empire off the face of the earth and executed the governor by pouring molten silver directly into his eyes and ears. Hubris, as it turns out, has a very specific melting point.